I can still feel the tremor in my hands as I flipped through the pages of the mortgage statement. My mortgage statement. Every line screamed betrayal. The original loan amount, the interest rate, the balance remaining. Only a week ago, those numbers belonged to my parents, secured by their names. Now, by some cruel twist of fate, my name glared back at me from the top of every page. My name is Marisol Whitaker, and I have always believed in independence. Growing up in the tidy suburbs of Portland, I watched my parents' modest success as they balanced multiple jobs and endless bills just to give my sister Lenora and me a stable childhood. After college, I carved my own path, working 2 waitressing shifts, saving meticulously, turning down every invitation I couldn't afford. Every payment on my credit card was deliberate, every late fee avoided. But I never imagined those good decisions would cost me so much. It was a Tuesday afternoon when the bank's letter arrived, cream-colored, embossed with the Chase emblem I'd come to recognize from my checking account statements. I was late to pick up a bottle of milk for breakfast the next morning, and the envelope slipped through the mail slot as I returned home. My shoulders felt heavy as I slid it open. When I saw the words "loan transferred," a sharp burst of rage seared through me. I stared at the date, July 1st, 2025. Exactly 2 days ago. "Transfer to Marisol Whitaker," I whispered, tracing the italicized script with a trembling finger. My credit had served me well. No major dings, just the occasional gas fill-up or buying a plane ticket on sale. But these numbers meant my parents had somehow used that trust to buy Lenora's house. An hour later, I stormed into their living room, mortgage papers clutched like grenades. My father, Thomas Whitaker, was perched in his favorite armchair, flicking through a John Grisham novel. My mother, Elise, sat beside him, knitting quietly. They shared a look when I entered, a look that twisted my stomach. "Mom, Dad, explain this," I said, voice low but trembling. I slammed a copy of the statement onto the coffee table. "You transferred my credit to a loan for Lenora's house. Why?" My father sighed, setting down his book. "We needed a better rate. Your sister's credit wasn't strong enough. Yours is stellar." My mother looked up, guilt flickering in her soft blue eyes. "Sweetheart, we thought we were protecting everyone." "Protecting her," I corrected, my voice cracking. "Not me." Lenora burst through the front door just then, keys jangling in her hand. She froze when she saw the papers scattered, the terror in my eyes. I realized then that no one had thought to call me. No one had given me a choice. Lenora tried to reach out, her expression contrite. "Mari, it was just supposed to be temporary." "I'm not a bank," I spat, backing away. "I'm your sister." She stared, tears shimmering at the corners of her eyes. "I'm sorry." But sorry didn't erase the late fees piling up or the damage to my credit score. It didn't replace the sleepless nights I would spend calculating how long it would take to pay down a 6-figure mortgage. It didn't undo the sense of violation in my bones. In the days that followed, I sat at my kitchen table, spreadsheets open on my laptop. I reviewed the terms. A 30-year fixed-rate mortgage. A balance of $248,000 at 3.7% interest. I asked myself a question I could hardly believe I was asking. What could I do to reclaim my life? Late one night, after burying myself in bank statements and annuity tables, I saw the glimmer of a plan. My parents were proud, risk-averse. They believed in tradition, trusted their local branch, their financial advisor of 30 years. I wondered, what if I stepped into their roles? What if I bought their mortgage, took over those payments, and then raised the rent? I closed my eyes, picturing the look on their faces when I offered them a new lease on their own home, at market rates. Would they see it as poetic justice? Or would they ask me to forgive them? I didn't know. But I knew I had to act. Dawn light filtered through the blinds as my laptop pinged with a confirmation. The funds transfer was approved. My heart hammered with a mix of triumph and guilt. I had just bought my parents' mortgage. Now came the next move. Rewriting the rules of our family's financial game. I leaned back, exhaling, and typed a single line into a fresh document. Propose new rental agreement. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're from. If this story moves you, please subscribe. Tomorrow, I have a special story for you. I didn't sleep that night, not really. Every time I drifted off, visions of signatures and dollar signs jolted me awake again. At dawn, I stood in front of the bathroom mirror, my reflection pale and puffy-eyed. I splashed cold water on my face, trying to wash away the disbelief. But the mortgage documents were still there on the kitchen counter, weighted down by my old college coffee mug, as if they'd fly away otherwise. After a strong cup of black coffee, I called my bank's liaison. Her name was Kara, and she'd handled my accounts for years. She answered with her usual clipped politeness. "Marisol, you're up early. I'm going to need all the paperwork drafted today. The lease agreement, the change of ownership confirmation, and the rental terms. Market rate. Add in clauses for late fees, penalties, the works." A long silence. "You're sure about this?" Kara asked. I stared at my reflection again. No. But I'm doing it anyway. By noon, I had the documents printed and stacked neatly in my work tote. I took a taxi to my parents' neighborhood, the same one I grew up in, where kids still left bikes on lawns and yellow daisies grew wild in the yards. Nostalgia and nausea twisted together in my gut as I rang the doorbell. My father answered, surprised to see me. He stepped aside to let me in, but his eyes darted to the tote bag, the official letterhead peeking out. We sat around the same cherrywood dining table where we'd carved pumpkins every October, where I'd studied for my high school finals. The irony wasn't lost on me. My mother hovered near the kitchen doorway, drying her hands on a dish towel. Lenora was there too, perched on the edge of a chair like she might bolt at any second. I laid out the paperwork, every page a testament to the consequences of betrayal. "I bought your mortgage," I said evenly. My father's brow creased. "What?" "I bought the loan. From now on your payments come to me. And I'm raising the rent to market rate. That's the new lease agreement." My mother's face went white. Lenora sucked in a breath. My father leaned back, eyes narrowed. "You can't do that." I shoved the lease across the table. "I can." And I did. "You didn't give me a choice when you signed my name to that loan. Now I'm giving you a choice. Sign the lease or sell the house and move." I waited for the shouting, but the silence was worse. The weight of decades pressed down on that room. Family dinners, birthday cakes, whispered arguments. My mother's hands trembled as she reached for the pen. My father stared at me like I was a stranger. When it was done, I walked out without looking back. The breeze outside felt sharper, cleaner. For the first time in days, I felt like the ground under my feet was mine again. But the adrenaline didn't last. Back in my tiny apartment, I sat at my desk and stared at the lease copies. I was their landlord now, their daughter and their landlord. Every month, they'd have to send me a check, a reminder of what they'd done and what I'd done in return. I should have felt powerful. I should have felt justified. Instead, I felt sick. That night, Lenora called. I let it go to voicemail, then she texted, "Please, let's talk." The next morning, she showed up at my door. I opened it just enough to see her tear-streaked face. Her hair was pulled back in a sloppy ponytail, and she looked like she hadn't slept either. "Mari, please. I didn't know they'd do that. I swear to you, I didn't." I folded my arms. "You live in the house they bought with my credit. You benefited from it." "I'll pay you back," she said, voice trembling. "I'll get a second job, I laughed, a bitter sound that didn't feel like mine. "You'll never make enough. It's not about the money anymore, it's about trust." She flinched. "What can I do to fix it?" I hesitated. The idea came out of my mouth before I could stop it. "Move out. Sell the house. Let Mom and Dad figure it out. You don't get to live there for free anymore." Lenora stared at me like I'd slapped her. "That's my home." I shook my head. "It was bought with my name. It was never really yours." She turned and walked away, shoulders hunched. I closed the door and leaned against it, fighting the lump in my throat. Days turned into weeks. The first rent check came in an envelope with my mother's careful handwriting. The second month, it was late. The third month, they called asking for an extension. I held firm. Each conversation chipped away at something inside me, but I told myself it was necessary. They needed to learn. So did I. One evening, after yet another strained phone call, I walked the blocks of my neighborhood to clear my head. I passed rows of tidy duplexes and blooming gardens, but I couldn't shake the heaviness in my chest. I ended up at a little cafe I used to visit when I was saving for my first apartment. Tiny tables, mismatched chairs, and the best black coffee in town. I sat near the window, stirring sugar into my cup, when a voice interrupted my thoughts. "Mind if I sit here?" I looked up. A man about my age, early 30s, with dark hair and kind eyes. He gestured to the empty chair across from me. "Sure," I said, too tired to care. We talked about nothing at first. His job as a freelance designer, my work at the insurance firm, the unpredictable Portland weather. But something about his easy smile loosened the knots in my chest. When he asked why I looked so distracted, the whole story tumbled out. My parents, the mortgage, the lease. By the time I finished, my coffee was cold. He didn't flinch or offer empty platitudes. He just nodded. "That's brutal, but you did what you had to do." "Did I?" I asked, staring into the dregs of my cup. He shrugged. "Sometimes the only way to teach people respect is to make them feel the consequences. Doesn't mean it doesn't suck." We talked until the cafe closed. He walked me home in the rain, his umbrella too small for the both of us. When we reached my building, he handed me his card. Liam Rourke, freelance designer, his number scribbled at the bottom. "Call me," he said, flashing that lopsided grin. "You look like you could use a friend." I watched him disappear down the block, my heart strangely lighter. The next day, I got a text from Lenora. "We need to talk. Please." I didn't know if I was ready, but I knew one thing. This was far from over. And this time, I'd be ready to fight for myself, no matter what it cost. Lenora didn't text again. Not that day, not the day after. But I felt her words echoing in my chest every time I looked at my phone. "Burble Stere, we need to talk." What else was there to say? Still, by the third night, guilt was gnawing its way through me like termites in softwood. I stared at the ceiling in the dark, hands folded on my stomach, counting the rhythmic churn of the apartment's old radiator. Then I picked up my phone and sent a reply. "Stars tomorrow. My place. 6 p.m. Stars time." No hearts, no emojis, no softening. The next evening I scrubbed the counters, arranged some teacups, and lit a candle out of sheer nervous habit. When Lenora finally knocked, she looked older. Not in the physical sense, but weighed down by something. She had a grocery bag in her arms, and a bottle of red wine peeking from the top. "I brought food," she said, voice cautious. I stepped aside. We ate on the couch. She'd brought Thai, our favorite from college days, back when we still split things without counting who paid more. The silence was stilted. I chewed slowly, watching the way she pushed rice around her plate. Finally, she looked up. "You were right." I didn't say anything. She set her plate down. "I knew about the loan, but I didn't know it was going to be in your name. I should have asked. I was stupid, entitled, and I'm sorry." Her voice cracked, and for a moment, she was just my sister again, not the unintentional thief of my future. "I want to fix it," she said, "so I talked to a realtor." That made me sit up. "You what?" "I'm going to sell the house." I blinked. It's not mine. And it never felt like home anyway, not after all this. "I'll take the loss, whatever it takes to get you out of this." My throat felt thick. "What will you do?" "I'll figure it out. Maybe move in with some friends. I've been freelancing lately, picking up dog walking gigs, babysitting, even trying to get into some online remote work." I couldn't believe it. I should have felt vindicated. But instead, I felt something like grief. We were standing in the wreckage of something we didn't know we'd broken. We talked for hours about the house, our parents, everything we hadn't said for months. When she left, I stood at the window and watched her disappear into the amber glow of the streetlights, holding that grocery bag like a peace offering. The next morning, I got a call from Kara. "The listing is up, the market's decent, you may get close to the purchase price." I exhaled. Now came the next impossible step, telling our parents. I didn't want to do it over the phone, so I invited them to the same cafe where I'd first met Liam. This time I sat across from my mother, while my father sipped black coffee with slow, mechanical movements. They knew something was coming. I could see it in their posture. "We're selling the house," I said. Their eyes snapped up. "Elena agreed to it," I added. "We're going to pay off the loan, clear the slate." My mother's lips parted, but she didn't speak. My father set down his cup. "Are you happy now?" he said. The words struck like a slap. "No," I said quietly, "but this isn't about being happy. It's about being honest and accountable." "You think we wanted to do this?" he said. "You think we didn't feel sick every day watching your name tied to that loan? Then why didn't you stop it?" He looked away. My mother touched my hand. "We thought we were helping. We really believed Lenora would pay it. That it was temporary." "Well, temporary turned into a disaster, and now we're cleaning it up." A long pause. Then, to my surprise, my father nodded. "Then let us help." "What do you mean?" He took a deep breath. "I've been working overtime at the mill. Mom's been cutting hours at her job to watch the neighbor's twins. She gets paid under the table. We'll put whatever we can toward it." It wasn't a miracle solution, but it was something, a gesture. I left the cafe feeling something I hadn't felt in weeks, like I wasn't alone. Later that week, I texted Liam. He called back almost instantly. "Hey," he said, "you okay?" "Yeah, actually I think I am." We went out for burgers and walked through a street fair under twinkle lights. He didn't pry, he didn't push. And when I laughed at something dumb he said, I realized I hadn't laughed like that in months. As summer slipped into fall, the house went under contract. The buyer offered just shy of the mortgage value. It meant I'd still carry a small debt, but it was manageable. It wasn't the financial hit that scared me. It was the emotional one. But every document signed, every dollar recouped, was a brick in rebuilding the wall between my identity and my parents' decisions. One Thursday evening, while reviewing lease documents for my new rental property investment, yes, I had decided to reinvest some of the refunded equity, I got a text from Lenora. "Dinner at Mom and Dad's? Just us, like old times." I hesitated, then typed, "Okay." I brought a pie. Their home wasn't the same. The furniture was different. The layout had changed. But the smell of Mom's lemon rosemary chicken wafted through the air like nothing had happened. We ate, we laughed, and for the first time in a long time, no one mentioned money. Later, my mom pressed a small envelope into my hands. "Just open it later," she said. At home, I peeled it open. Inside was a handwritten note. "Capture size, we were wrong, we're sorry. Thank you for not giving up on us. Love, Mom." And beneath it, a check. It wasn't huge, but it was something, a gesture, an apology with numbers attached. I smiled, folded it gently, and set it in the drawer where I kept all the things I never wanted to forget. But the past has a way of lingering. And just when I thought this chapter was closed, the next storm was already forming. Because a week later, I got a call from a number I didn't recognize. "Ms. Whitaker, this is Detective Carlson. We need to talk about some suspicious activity linked to your name. It appears someone's opened a new credit account in your name, and they've racked up close to $10,000. My heart dropped. Not again. But deep down, I already knew who it was. I just didn't want to believe it. $10,000? I repeated, each syllable catching in my throat. I pressed the phone closer to my ear, heart pounding as if it could shake the truth loose from the receiver. Detective Carlson's voice was calm but clipped. "The account was opened last month. Electronics purchases, luxury clothes, a couple of furniture pieces. All traced back to your name, your social security number, your address. We flagged it when the account fell into default after the second billing cycle." I closed my eyes. "Are you sure it was me?" "You're the listed account holder. But we have reason to believe it may be identity theft. We'll need you to come down to the precinct to file a formal report." I agreed, ending the call with trembling hands. The phone slipped onto the couch beside me, and I sat there for several minutes, staring at the wall while the truth coiled around my spine like ice. I'd only just begun to recover, just clawed my way out of the wreckage my parents had left behind. I had let them back in, I had forgiven, but now this. I didn't want to believe it. Not again, not from them. I spent the night pulling credit reports, line by line. There it was. A card from Luxura Bank, opened under my name but with a shipping address I didn't recognize. Orders shipped to a condo complex on the other side of town. Not mine. Not anyone I knew. My jaw clenched. I sent a text to Kara. Someone opened another account under my name. I'm heading to the station in the morning. We'll update you. Then I stared at the contact names in my phone. My parents. Lenora. Liam. I didn't sleep. Again. The precinct was cold and smelled faintly of old coffee and wet carpet. I filled out forms for 45 minutes, answered questions, signed copies of documents, and handed over my printed credit report. Detective Carlson was tall, in his 50s, with a clean-shaven face and weary eyes that had seen too many people lie straight to them. He watched me closely as I explained my family's recent financial debacle. "Has anyone else had access to your personal documents?" he asked. I hesitated. "My family? But—" He raised an eyebrow. "My sister, my parents. After the mortgage debacle, I locked everything down, changed passwords, froze my credit. But? I swallowed. I took the freeze off for a few days while I was working through closing on the house sale. And Lenora had some documents at one point. I trusted her again." He nodded, scribbled something down. "We'll look into it. The shipping address is a good lead. We'll see who lives there." As I stood to leave, he handed me a card. "You'll hear from us soon. In the meantime, don't contact the suspected individual." I left feeling like my lungs had been wrapped in lead. Liam was waiting on my stoop when I got back. He stood as I approached, hands tucked into the pockets of his denim jacket. "You okay?" I shook my head. "No, but I'm glad you're here." Inside, I told him everything. He listened without interrupting, his brow furrowed deeply. When I finished, he leaned back. "You think it's Lenora?" "I don't want to," I whispered, "but I do." We sat in silence for a long time. Then he reached over and took my hand. "Whatever happens, you're not doing this alone, okay?" It was the first time anyone had said that to me since this mess began. And I didn't realize until that moment just how badly I needed to hear it. The next day, the detective called. "We have video footage from the Luxura store security cameras. The person used your ID, and it appears to be your sister." I didn't respond. I couldn't. My mouth opened, but no sound came out. "I'm sorry," he added softly. "We're bringing her in for questioning. We'll keep you informed." I hung up without saying goodbye. That night, I went to my parents' house. I stood in the driveway for 10 full minutes, clutching the steering wheel, staring at the porch light glowing faintly through the fog. Then I got out. My father opened the door. "Mari." I raised a hand. "Where's Lenora?" My mother stepped into view, lips pressed together in a pale line. "She's not here." I stepped inside anyway, brushing past them. "Don't lie to me." "Mari, what's going on?" my dad asked. I turned to face them. "She used my credit again, opened a card, $10,000. She's being investigated." They stared, frozen. "She used my name, again." The sound of footsteps on the stairs made us all turn. Lenora stood on the landing, hair messy, eyes puffy. "I didn't mean to," she said. My vision blurred. "That's your defense?" "I didn't think it would go that far," she whispered. "I just needed help. I thought I could pay it off before anyone noticed." "You thought?" My voice rose. "You stole my identity, again, after everything." Tears rolled down her cheeks. I didn't know where else to go. My mother moved toward me. "Mari, she was desperate." I shook my head. "You don't get to do this again. You don't get to play the victim this time." I turned and walked out. The door didn't slam hard enough. The weeks that followed were a blur of police reports, affidavits, and legal documents. Lenora was formally charged but took a plea deal: repayment, mandatory counseling, community service. It kept her out of jail, but not out of the hole she dug. I didn't attend the hearing. I stopped answering calls from my parents. I didn't respond to texts. The bridge was burned, and I was tired of choking on the smoke. But Liam stayed. He brought me soup on nights when I couldn't eat, left flowers on my doorstep, walked with me when I couldn't talk. He didn't push. He just stayed. One night, as autumn turned bitter and leaves skittered across the sidewalk, I stood with him under the amber glow of a street lamp. "I can't believe it was her," I said. He tucked a strand of hair behind my ear. "I can, and it sucks, but you're still standing." I laughed softly. "Barely." He leaned down, pressing his forehead to mine. "You're the strongest woman I know." In that moment, I believed him. Spring arrived like a whispered promise, and with it came a letter, handwritten, from Lenora. I stared at the envelope for hours before opening it. I'm asking for forgiveness. I don't deserve it. But I wanted you to know I'm paying off every cent. I got a job at a catering company. I take the bus to work every morning. I haven't used a credit card in months. Sometimes I lost myself, and I hurt you in ways I can't undo. But I'm changing. I promise you I'm changing. Even if you never speak to me again, I want you to know I'm trying. Stark love always. 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 I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just folded the letter and tucked it into the same drawer where I'd kept Mom's apology. Some part of me wanted to believe her. But belief would take time. And for once, I was okay with that. Because finally, I had time. And this time, it belonged only to me. But even as the air warmed and my life returned to some sense of rhythm, an email landed in my inbox that changed everything. Subject: pre-approval confirmed, commercial investment loan available. It was from Kara. I stared at it, rereading every word. I'd applied months ago, almost as a joke, on a dare from Liam, one rainy night, over pizza and wine. He'd laughed and said, "What if you bought something real, something big?" I'd told him it was ridiculous, but I'd done it anyway. Now, the loan was approved. And suddenly, I wasn't just someone cleaning up after family disasters. I was a property investor, a businesswoman. Someone who could build something of her own. And I was ready. I read the email again, then again. My fingers hovered over the trackpad as if pressing reply might send my whole life spinning into another storm. Cruz, pre-approval confirmed, commercial investment loan available. I had applied without hope. It was one of those impulsive acts born of late-night laughter and a lingering glass of wine. Back then, I hadn't believed I'd get it. Not after the identity theft, the mortgage mess, the endless line of credit cleanups. But my persistence, and admittedly, Kara's advocacy, had done something. I was being offered a loan large enough to buy a small commercial property, enough to buy a building, and start something of my own. I stood, walked to the window, and watched the wind stir the branches. The world was quiet, but my heart was not. This story took us a long time. If you like it, subscribe. Now, back to the story. I scheduled a meeting with Kara the next morning. We met at her office, a corner room in the building above her branch. She greeted me with a warm smile that bordered on pride. "I told you," she said, sliding the paperwork across the desk. "Your credit report is back in good standing. The income from your rental investments is stable, and your debt-to-income ratio is manageable. You're a good candidate." I studied the document. "Even after?" She nodded. "We know about the fraud. It's documented, and it was resolved. That helps." I read every line twice. A 2-year balloon term, competitive interest rate, ample liquidity buffer. It was more than just numbers. It was a second chance. "You thinking retail? Office? Multi-unit?" Kara asked. "I don't know yet," I admitted, "but I want something that builds." She smiled. "Well, you've got a solid start." By the end of the week, I'd called 3 different agents. One of them, an assertive woman named Gina Martin, offered to show me a few properties just outside the downtown area. The first 2 were mismatched, one too big, the other already under offer. But the third, an aging 2-story building tucked between a dance studio and a faded flower shop, caught my breath. Gina unlocked the door and led me into a wide, open space with scuffed floors and sunlight streaming in through dusty windows. Former print shop, vacant for 6 years. The bones are good, plumbing's old, roof needs patching, but there's potential. I walked through slowly, touching the railing, tracing the cracked paint. "Can I see the back?" I asked. We stepped into a rear hallway, where a set of stairs led to a second floor that had once been an apartment. Now it was bare, stripped walls, broken tiles, rusted pipes. But I saw it. What it could be. A co-working space. A community kitchen. A project incubator. It wasn't just real estate. It was Timartist mine. The offer went in the next day. The negotiations took a week. Then, on a rain-soaked Tuesday afternoon, I signed the purchase documents in Kara's office with a pen that felt heavier than any pen had a right to feel. "It's yours," she said, handing me a key with a crooked smile. "The whole building." I stood on the sidewalk that evening, staring up at the peeling facade and cracked windows. The wind howled around the corner, kicking up bits of trash and dead leaves. I'd never felt more alive. The renovation plan took shape slowly. I met with contractors, reviewed bids, juggled costs and timelines. Liam, ever resourceful, helped with the design mock-ups. He wasn't an architect, but his eye for clean lines and functional beauty gave me ideas I hadn't even considered. "We could knock this wall down," he said one afternoon, pointing to the narrow divider near the stairwell. "Open up the floor plan, bring in more light." "You think we can?" He grinned. "With a sledgehammer and a dream, anything's possible." We laughed until our stomachs hurt. By mid-March, demolition began. I stood in the center of the space, hard hat on, as workers tore out rotten drywall and old counters. The noise was deafening, but underneath it was a music I hadn't heard in years. The sound of asterisk becoming. Then, just when I thought nothing could dim the momentum, my mother called. Her voice was small. "Sweetheart, we're losing the house." I stopped breathing. "What?" "We've fallen behind," she said. "We took out a second mortgage. After Lenora's charges, we needed the money." I pressed my hand to my temple. "You what?" "We thought we could pay it back. But with the interest and the late fees, they've started foreclosure proceedings." I closed my eyes. "When?" "We have 60 days." I ended the call and stared at the wall. I'd rebuilt my life on the ruins they left me. Now they were asking for another lifeline. I spent the night pacing. Liam watched me quietly, letting me burn through my anger. Finally, I sat down on the floor of my new building, among the rubble and dust, and stared at the ceiling. "I can't let them lose the house," I said. "Not just because they're my parents, but because that house." I swallowed. It was the last thing we had before everything broke. He sat beside me. "What if you buy it?" I blinked. "What?" "Buy it outright. You're pre-approved. You've got assets. Use them. Save the house. But this time, own it." The idea took root like wildfire. Not a rescue, a transaction. A boundary. I called Kara. "Can we leverage my new property to buy another?" She paused. "It's tight. But yes, with the right appraisal and a clear business plan." I ran the numbers. Met with my financial advisor. Built a proposal. Within 2 weeks, I had the paperwork. Within 3, I owned my parents' home. And I wrote them a lease. This time, it wasn't symbolic. It was precise, fair, and firm. They signed it with shaking hands. The day the foreclosure was officially canceled, my mother hugged me in the doorway, sobbing. "We don't deserve you," she whispered. I didn't disagree. But I also didn't walk away. Because forgiveness isn't forgetting. It's drawing lines. And holding them. Renovations on the commercial building finished in May. The space was beautiful. Open floors, clean lines, exposed brick. The second story gleamed with new windows and freshly sanded wood. I called it Nesta Nest, a place for people to land. And to launch? We hosted a launch party in early June. Local artists, entrepreneurs, freelancers, all mingling over canapés and wine. Liam made a toast, grinning. To Marisol Whitaker, the woman who turned betrayal into blueprints and ruins into revival. I smiled, glass trembling slightly in my hand. I was someone else now. Not the girl who waited for apologies. Not the daughter desperate for approval. not the sister cleaning up after chaos. I was a builder, a protector, a woman who made her own future. And nothing, not betrayal, not broken trust, not even love, would take that from me again. The Nest's second month was busier than I ever expected. Half the offices on the first floor were rented before we'd even finished hanging art on the walls. One tenant ran a sustainable textile startup. Another was a former corporate executive turned life coach who brought clients in for weekly seminars. The upstairs kitchen and co-working space buzzed with quiet energy, laptops clicking, coffee brewing, ideas floating between strangers who slowly became a community. Every morning, I unlocked the front door with a kind of reverence. I wasn't just keeping a business afloat, I was holding space for possibility, for repair. Liam moved his freelance design studio into the third office on the left. We hadn't put a label on what we were, us, but our connection deepened in small, sturdy ways. A glance across the meeting table, a shared joke while restocking paper towels, a soft brush of fingers passing blueprints. He didn't try to fix me, I didn't try to fix him. We just built. And then, one evening in early July, while I was sweeping sawdust out of a corner I'd somehow overlooked during renovation, he walked up behind me and said, "You know, I think I'm in love with you." I froze. Dust settled. My pulse did not. He leaned on the broom handle, grinning like it wasn't the most terrifying sentence a person could say. "Too soon?" I turned. "No, not too soon." He stepped closer. "Then what is it?" "It's just, I'm still building." He nodded. "I know, me too. Let's build it together." I kissed him, and for the first time since my life had been upended by the people who were supposed to protect me, I felt safe in someone's arms. But safety has a short shelf life when your foundation was once paper thin. The trouble started with a tenant named Becca. She was a recent college grad renting one of the shared desks upstairs. She paid on time, kept to herself, and ran a small candle business online. I liked her. Quiet. Focused. Until the day a man came storming into the Nest, demanding to see her. I stopped him at the front desk. "Sir, you'll need to calm down or leave." "She owes me money," he snapped. "Thousands. Don't pretend you don't know what kind of scam she's running." I blinked. "Scam?" "She used my identity to order supplies. I've got the charges. She's a fraud." I called security, had him escorted out. But something didn't sit right. Later that afternoon, I gently asked Becca to step into my office. She was shaking. "Becca, is everything okay?" She broke. Tears spilled. Words tumbled. Her ex had been stalking her, accusing her of theft. She hadn't done it, she swore, but she didn't have the resources to fight him in court. She couldn't afford a lawyer. "I just wanted a quiet place to work," she said, voice crumbling. "But I can leave. I don't want to cause you problems." I stared at her, saw the same fear I'd worn not that long ago. "No," I said, "you stay. We'll figure it out." I spent the next 2 nights researching low-cost legal aid programs. Found her one, helped her print evidence, file an affidavit. We built a case. Slowly, the storm around her calmed. Her ex backed off. And she stayed. That was the beginning. 1 week later, a single mom named Nina, renting a desk 2 spots down from Becca, confessed that she was behind on her credit card payments. Her ex had tanked her credit after draining their joint account. I listened, again, sat with her, helped her budget, referred her to a nonprofit that specialized in rebuilding financial literacy. By the end of the month, 4 tenants had come to me with similar stories. Bad credit, financial abuse, disasters tied to people they once trusted. And I realized something. The Nest wasn't just a space. It was a sanctuary. I didn't just want to lease desks. I wanted to fight for people like me. People who'd been gutted by the ones they should have been able to rely on. I sat up one night drafting a proposal. I called it Nest Rising 3 a financial recovery program. Free workshops on credit repair. Mental health support groups. One-on-one consultations. A resource hub built into the upstairs lounge every Saturday. I pitched it to Kara first. She read the document, looked up and said, "You need funding." I nodded. "That's why I came to you." She smiled. "Let's apply for a grant." 2 weeks later, we submitted the proposal to 3 different community uplift funds. And 2 weeks after that, we got our first approval. It wasn't massive, but it was real. Enough to cover a part-time social worker, print materials, and a licensed counselor once a week. We launched Nice Nest Rising quietly. No press releases, just flyers, word of mouth, and soft invitations. The first Saturday, 3 people came. The next week, 12. By month's end, our lounge was full. One woman held my hands afterward and whispered, "You have no idea what this means to me." But I did. Because I'd once been exactly where she was. Things with my parents settled into a strange rhythm. They paid their rent on time, sent texts on holidays. My mother occasionally mailed handwritten cards, her cursive always slightly tilted left. I didn't visit often, but the bitterness had faded. Lenora wrote twice. Her letters were more grounded now, apologetic, but no longer begging. She'd enrolled in a business course. She was rebuilding. "I don't expect you to reply," her latest letter said, "but I'll keep writing. Because that's the only way I know how to tell you I'm still trying." I didn't respond, but I didn't throw it away either. Liam found me reading it one night. I handed it to him without a word. He read it, then nodded. "She's climbing out of her own mess. Doesn't mean you have to pull her up, but maybe just let her climb." I folded the letter gently and placed it in the drawer with the others. My past wasn't erased, but it wasn't controlling me anymore. One morning, as I unlocked the nest, I found a small package taped to the front door. No return address. Inside, a photo album. Black and white pictures, faded color snapshots, pages from our childhood. Me, Lenora, our parents. Birthdays, snow days, beach trips. Tucked into the last page was a note. "Whatever we were, whatever we became, I never stopped loving you. Eller Sode." I closed the album, sat on the floor of the entryway, and cried. Not because I missed who we were, but because I had finally let go of trying to fix it. Summer waned. The nest grew. We hosted our first microgrant pitch night for small businesses. Becca won second place, enough to fund her own candle label rebrand. Nina started a parenting blog that exploded within a month. I watched it all, silent, in awe. Liam took my hand one night as we locked up. "You know you're a force, right?" he said. I smiled. "I'm a woman with a broom and a dream." He kissed my forehead. Same thing. And I knew, no matter what the past had stolen, what I'd rebuilt mattered more. Because this wasn't just about real estate. It was about reclaiming power. And giving it away. So others could too. Late August in Portland means warm nights, cooler mornings, and the slow hush of summer fading to gold. The nest stayed open longer those evenings, our windows glowing like lanterns against the street's deepening dusk. More people came to the Rising workshops, students, single parents, once burned entrepreneurs. Word spread, and the lounge buzzed with laughter and quiet tears, coffee cups balanced on knees, people passing around pens to sign up for the next session. Some nights I sat in my small upstairs office, listening to the gentle hum below, and thought about the girl I used to be, the one who couldn't say no, who thought loving people meant paying for their mistakes, who let her own name get buried under other people's debts. That version of me felt like a ghost now, familiar, but see-through, like a photograph that never quite focuses. Liam was there through it all. He worked late from his corner studio, always the last to turn off his light. Sometimes he'd knock on my door just to sit with me in comfortable silence, our legs tangled on the couch while we watched the city lights blink between the blinds. One Thursday night, I found him flipping through the old photo album Lenora had left. He didn't ask, he just sat beside me, resting his chin on my shoulder. "You ever gonna write her back?" he asked. "I don't know," I said. "Maybe, but not yet." He nodded, kissing my temple. "You don't owe her that, but maybe you owe it to yourself." The idea lodged in my mind like a tiny ember. I didn't know if it would light anything, but I let it stay. In September, Becca's candle launch party filled our big upstairs co-working floor with the soft flicker of 100 tiny flames, labels with her own designs, packaging funded by her microgrant, boxes stacked with tissue paper and gold foil stickers. She stood at the front of the room, hands shaking, voice stronger than I'd ever heard it. "I thought I'd lose everything when someone tried to ruin my credit," she said. "But this place, this woman," she looked at me, eyes glassy, "gave me the tools to fix it, and now, here we are." Applause rang off the walls. Someone popped cheap, sparkling wine. I hugged Becca, my chest tight with a pride that felt almost maternal. It reminded me how far I'd come. The Nest's reputation spread. Kara invited me to speak at a local women's financial empowerment panel. I stood backstage in a black dress, index cards trembling in my hand. Liam squeezed my fingers before I stepped out. "You built this," he whispered. "Don't hide it." So I didn't. I told my story, raw, unpolished, the stolen credit, the betrayal, the slow, brutal climb back, and then how I turned that pain into a place where others could climb too. Afterward, a woman approached me, tears in her eyes. "I thought I was alone," she said. "Thank you for proving I'm not." I walked home that night with Liam's arm around my shoulders, my heels swinging from my hand, my feet bare on the warm city pavement. Autumn slipped in like an apology for summer's heat. Yellow leaves gathered in the Nest's doorway each morning. Inside, our Saturday workshops swelled to the point that we moved them downstairs, clearing out the front office space just to fit everyone in. Nina's blog went viral. She used her first ad check to pay off the last of her debt. One morning, she knocked on my door with a tray of muffins and an envelope. "What's this?" I asked. "A donation," she said, "for Nest Rising, so someone else can get what I got." I took it with shaking hands. People kept showing up for themselves, showing up for each other, and I kept showing up for them. Then, one evening, a letter arrived. The envelope was thick, the handwriting tight and unfamiliar. Inside, an offer. A regional real estate developer. He'd seen the Nest, loved the model, wanted to invest. "Franchise," the letter said. "Expansion. Portland is only the beginning." I stared at the paper until the words blurred. Liam found me like that. He picked up the letter, whistled low. "Big money," he said. "Are you ready for that?" "I don't know," I said. "I thought this was just for here, for me, for us." "Maybe it still is," he said gently, "but maybe it can be for more." I sat with it for days. Talked to Kara. Talked to Gina, my real estate agent turned trusted friend. Ran the numbers, read the fine print. It was real, it was doable. But it meant giving up some control. It meant trusting someone again with my vision. I thought about my parents, Lenora, all the ways trust had cost me. But then I thought about Becca, Nina, the quiet woman at the panel who had hugged me and cried because she realized she wasn't alone. What if I could give that to 100 more? 1,000? I called Liam from my office late one night. "What if I say yes?" He laughed softly. "Then I guess you'd better be ready to build again." So I said yes. To the franchise, to the risk, to the hope that maybe, just maybe, the worst thing that ever happened to me could become the best thing I ever gave away. I wrote back to Lenora, too. Just a few lines. "I see you trying. I'm still here. I can't promise what comes next, but I see you." It wasn't an open door, but it was a window cracked just enough to let in some air. And when I dropped the envelope in the mail slot outside the Nest, the street was quiet and the autumn wind was warm against my face. Some stories stay open-ended. But for once, mine was wide opened, in all the right ways. September bled into October, and with it came the damp chill that Portlanders knew too well, mist that clung to your coat, puddles that grew into lakes at the corners of every block. The Nest smelled like cinnamon and fresh coffee most mornings now. Nina started bringing in her muffins every Saturday, and someone always made sure the kettle was full. On the first Friday of the month, Kara pulled me aside after a Rising workshop. "We need to talk," she said, her voice careful. She handed me an envelope. I didn't even open it until I was alone in my office. It was another offer, bigger this time, a different investor, this one from Seattle, a woman named Maribel Vasquez. Her firm specialized in community development projects. They'd seen the franchise pitch, Heard about Nest Rising, wanted to take it national. My first instinct was panic. A national chain? I'd barely gotten used to the idea of opening one more Nest in another neighborhood. This was another level. More money, more control, more risk. Liam found me pacing under the exposed beams upstairs. I handed him the letter. He read it, let out a low whistle. "You always said you'd build something bigger than the mess they left you," he said. "Well, this is big." "I don't know if I'm ready," I said. "What if I lose what made it special? What if I can't protect the people we help?" He stepped closer, brushing his thumb across my jaw. "You won't lose it. You are it. And you won't do it alone." That weekend, I took a train up to Seattle to meet Maribel. We sat in her glass-walled office overlooking the Puget Sound, the sun breaking through the clouds like a blessing I didn't know I needed. Maribel was smart, direct. She didn't sugarcoat the realities. Staffing, oversight, local partnerships, the threat of mission drift when growth outpaces values. But she didn't talk down to me either. "I don't want Nest to become just another co-working chain," she said. "I want it to be an ecosystem, a place where people come not just to work but to heal, to rebuild, to grow. I think you do too." She slid a draft contract across the table. "I'll give you final say on programming, nonprofits you trust, people you vet. If you need to pull out, you can." It felt right, and terrifying, but mostly right. When I got home that night, Liam was waiting on my steps. We sat side by side under the porch light, my head on his shoulder. "You're not the same woman who sat at her kitchen table trying to figure out how to pay a mortgage that wasn't hers," he said. "You're bigger than that now, stronger. And no one will ever take your name again." By late October, the deal was signed. We started scouting cities for the first 3 expansions, one in Seattle, one in Eugene, and one back in my old neighborhood. The place where I'd grown up. The place I'd once run from. I stood on the sidewalk of my childhood street, the crisp wind tangling my hair, and stared at the old house. My parents still lived there, paying their rent on time, sending me birthday cards in my mother's careful script. I didn't knock. I didn't need to. It was enough to stand there and know that every mistake had become bricks in this foundation. Lenora wrote again. This time, it wasn't an apology. It was a question. "Could I come see the nest? I want to show you I'm not who I was." It took me a week to decide. But on a rainy Saturday morning, I texted back, "Come by next weekend, 10 a.m. She showed up in an old pea coat, damp hair sticking to her cheeks. She looked smaller somehow, like she'd finally let herself be soft again. We stood in the middle of the upstairs lounge as people shuffled around us, coffee cups in hand, quiet music playing through the ceiling speakers. "It's beautiful," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. I shrugged. "It's just a building." She turned to me, tears brimming. "No. It's more than that. It's you. All of this is you." She tried to hug me, then stopped, asking permission with her eyes. I let her, just for a moment. The smell of her shampoo, the way her shoulders shook, like we were kids again, before we knew how much hurt the world could hold. When she left, I didn't promise anything, not reconciliation, not a reset, but I didn't shut the door either. Some wounds heal best when they're given air and space and time. In November, Kara called with another piece of news. A small feature in a local paper had been picked up by a national outlet. The woman who turned her parents' betrayal into a nationwide sanctuary. I read it at my desk, sunlight streaming through the big bay windows, my name in print, my story told in my own words. It didn't feel like revenge, it felt like release. I sent a copy to my mother, she didn't reply. But a week later, I got a card in the mail, just my name on the envelope, her looping script on the inside. "I'm proud of you, always." I tucked it away with the others. The first snow came early that year. Liam and I stood outside the nest, arms wrapped around each other, watching flakes gather on the streetlights. Inside, Becca and Nina, and a half-dozen other tenants, laughed over takeout, planning the next pitch night, the next fundraiser, the next rising session. I breathed in the cold, the scent of coffee drifting from inside, the warmth of a man who'd held me up when everything else fell apart. For the first time, I realized I wasn't just surviving. I was living. And I was ready for whatever came next. December turned Portland into a watercolor. Gray skies, wet streets. The world washed soft and quiet by the rain that never seemed to stop. But inside the nest, the air buzzed with warmth. Nina's blog got picked up by a parenting magazine. Becca's candles landed in a local gift shop window, flickering behind frosted glass. Small wins that added up to something huge. Proof that what we'd built was working. The expansion planning took over my nights. I'd stay late after the last tenant had left, my laptop glowing on the old oak table in my office. Liam brought me dinner when I forgot to eat, wrapped a blanket around my shoulders when the heat kicked off for the night. He didn't ask why I pushed so hard. He knew why. Kara called one morning with a grin in her voice. Seattle and Eugene leases are confirmed. The neighborhood site is next. You ready to go home? Home. The word made my chest tighten. My childhood street, the corner store where I'd bought penny candy with Lenora, the cracked sidewalk outside our old house, memories that felt like they belonged to a different girl entirely. But I said yes, I'm ready. Before I could break ground, I needed city permits, meetings, approvals, red tape. I made an appointment to sit down with the neighborhood development board. I wore my best blazer and brought stacks of paperwork, blueprints, letters of support from tenants who wanted to see more nests bloom. Halfway through my presentation, I saw him, Mr. Abrams, my parents' old neighbor. He'd watched me ride my bike down that block 100 times. He looked at the blueprints, then up at me. "Your folks still in that house?" he asked. "They are," I said carefully. He nodded. "They know you're doing this?" I hesitated. "They know enough." He looked like he wanted to say more, but the board chair cleared her throat, and the moment passed. They approved the permits 2 weeks later. I stood in the parking lot with the paperwork pressed to my chest, the winter wind cutting through my coat, and thought, this street will remember me for something other than being the daughter who disappeared when things got hard. Christmas approached, Lenora called. We hadn't spoken since the day she visited the nest. "Hey," she said, "Mom's making dinner, just us, no drama. Will you come?" I almost said no, but something in her voice tugged at that stubborn piece of me that still wanted to believe we could fix what we'd broken. I brought Liam. My father opened the door and actually hugged me. My mother set the table with the old holiday china. Lenora handed me a small, crookedly wrapped box. Inside, a brass key. "It's the key to my new apartment," she said, cheeks pink. "I wanted you to have a copy, in case you ever want to come by." I held it in my palm, warm from her hands. I didn't know if I'd ever use it, but I didn't say no. After dinner, we sat by the fire. It wasn't perfect. Conversations stumbled in places. Silence stretched too long in others. But it was something. And that something felt like enough for now. Back at the nest, January arrived with biting cold. I spent New Year's Eve there, surrounded by tenants and friends, paper lanterns bobbing near the windows, laughter echoing off the exposed brick. At midnight, Liam kissed me under a banner that Becca had made out of butcher paper and gold paint. "To new beginnings," he whispered against my lips. I laughed. "Again?" He grinned. "Always." The second nest opened in Seattle on the first day of spring. I stood under a cheap green awning in the drizzle, scissors in my hand, a ribbon stretched between 2 streetlights. The sign gleamed above the door, the nest, rising. A mother with a toddler on her hip cut in front to shake my hand. "I read about you," she said. "You make me feel like maybe I can get my name back, too." Her words sat with me as we cut the ribbon and stepped inside. The Eugene nest was next. And then the neighborhood site. That one hurt in ways I hadn't prepared for. Construction unearthed layers of old memories. Walking past the empty lot, seeing kids with backpacks like mine, remembering how scared I'd been that no matter what I did, I'd always be stuck under the choices of the people who were supposed to love me. This time, I wasn't stuck, I was building. I invited my parents to the soft launch. They sat in folding chairs in the back row, my mother wiping her eyes while Kara introduced me to the neighborhood business council. My father clapped until his hands turned red. Later, when everyone drifted into the new co-working lounge to eat cupcakes and drink cider, my mother slipped her arm through mine. "You've done something none of us knew how to do," she said. "You made a place that forgives people for making mistakes, even us." I squeezed her hand. Neither of us said the word sorry. We didn't need to. At home that night, I sat cross-legged on my bed with a box of old documents. Bills with my name on them that I'd once resented so deeply, letters from the bank, the first lease I'd forced my parents to sign when I bought their mortgage. I tore them up, one by one, piece by piece, not because they didn't matter, but because they did, and because I didn't need them to matter anymore. Liam stood in the doorway, leaning against the frame, watching me with that quiet smile I'd come to crave. "Feels good, huh?" "Yeah," I said, "it does." He crossed the room, dropped to the floor, and started tearing with me, our laughter mixing with the rustle of shredded paper. When the last scrap fell away, I leaned into him, heart pounding like a fist on a door I'd just learned how to open. No more ghosts, no more chains, just space. And so much room to build. Spring deepened, turning Portland's streets into rivers of cherry blossoms and rain. The neighborhood nest opened its doors quietly. No ribbon cutting, no speeches, just a handwritten sign taped to the glass. "We're here when you're ready." People trickled in, some looking for a place to work, some looking for a place to start over. I recognized faces from my old street. Mr. Abrams popped in, grumbling about the city's potholes, but slipping a 20 into the rising donation box anyway. A woman I hadn't seen since high school came by to ask about bookkeeping jobs. It felt strange, like reaching back through time and pulling pieces of my past into the light, reshaping them into something better. Lenora showed up too. She came on a Thursday, when the early tulips out front still trembled in the cold wind. She knocked on my office door, holding 2 coffees and that same nervous half-smile she'd worn since we were kids. "You got a minute?" she asked. I nodded. She sat across from me, spinning the coffee cup between her palms. "I'm starting my own thing," she said. "A pet-sitting business. Small, but legit this time. I wanted you to see the paperwork before I file." I read her draft business plan. It wasn't perfect. Some numbers didn't add up. A few sections needed fleshing out. But it was honest. No cutting corners, no bending rules. Just her, trying, really trying. "I'm proud of you," I said. The words felt like lifting a weight off both of us. She didn't cry, she just nodded, eyes glassy. "You made me believe it was possible." By summer, all 3 nests were humming. The Seattle branch hosted its first microloan pitch event, and I watched via video as a young woman won seed money for her food truck idea. Eugene rolled out free childcare on workshop days. The neighborhood site, my neighborhood, felt like home in a way I hadn't expected. I'd walk through the doors and see people I used to dodge at the grocery store now waving, dropping off flyers for their side hustles, bringing cookies for the rising group. I sat with Kara in my old office one afternoon, watching sunlight spill across the floor. "You realize this is bigger than anything you could have done alone, right?" she said. I smiled. "That's the point." That August, Liam proposed, not with fanfare or grand gestures, just us, barefoot in my apartment, pizza boxes stacked on the coffee table. He slipped a simple ring onto my finger while I was mid-sentence about building code headaches. "Marisol Whitaker," he said. "Marry me. Not because you need saving. Not because you need fixing. But because you're already whole, and I just want to stand beside you." I laughed, half-sobbed, said yes before he could take it back. Becca, Nina, and the whole Nest crew threw us a tiny engagement party on the co-working floor. Streamers taped to the exposed brick, dollar store confetti sprinkled across folding tables. Everyone chipped in for a cake that read, "Builders Together." In the fall, I got another letter from my mother, just 2 lines this time. "You were always stronger than we knew. Thank you for showing us how." No excuses, no explanations, just gratitude. It was enough. Sometimes I'd sit alone in the new neighborhood nest after everyone left, Lights dim, street lamps throwing soft shadows through the big front windows. I'd think about that first bank letter all those years ago, the mortgage statement with my name in the wrong place, the way betrayal cracked something open inside me. It hadn't closed, not completely, some cracks stay, but I'd filled them with brick and wood, laughter and late nights, stories whispered over paper cups of cheap coffee. I built a life from the pieces they thought they'd taken. And every day I handed those pieces to someone else who needed to see they weren't alone. Liam and I spent our first married morning sweeping the front step of the neighborhood nest. He pointed to a tiny weed pushing up through the sidewalk crack. "Think you can build something on that?" he teased. I grinned, brushing the dirt away. "Watch me." And I knew, as the sun climbed over the rooftops, that no matter what came next, mistakes, setbacks, heartbreaks, my name was my own again. And this time, it would always lead me home. Winter passed like a held breath, slow and heavy, each morning dark until long after the alarm. The nest's windows fogged over with the hum of conversation and the clink of coffee mugs. I found myself lingering in the corners more often, less at the center of it all, more content to watch what we'd planted grow on its own. The rising sessions ran themselves now. Becca, Nina, and a few of our earliest tenants took turns leading workshops. We partnered with 2 local schools to offer financial literacy for graduating seniors. One evening, a 17-year-old girl with bright eyes and a wrinkled hoodie asked if I'd ever had to start over from scratch. I smiled and said, "More than once." That spring, we celebrated our first nest birthday. We threw a block party, food trucks lining the street, a live band on the corner, kids drawing chalk art across the sidewalk. Someone made a photo wall with snapshots from each nest, smiling faces, glitter-covered hands, grand openings, and quiet breakthroughs. I stood near the edge of the crowd, fingers laced with Liam's, and tried to take it all in, the way people came without being asked, the way they brought their friends, their families, their stories. "Remember when this was just an idea scribbled on the back of a napkin?" Liam said. I laughed. "I remember when it was a bank letter that felt like the end of my life." He kissed my temple. "You turned it into the beginning." A few weeks later, Kara asked if I would keynote the city's annual Business Renewal Summit. I hesitated. I wasn't a CEO. I wasn't some polished executive in a suit. I was a girl who'd been burned and clawed her way out. But maybe that's why I needed to say yes. I stood on the stage in an auditorium filled with entrepreneurs, investors, and students. My slides were simple: old photos, timelines, handwritten notes scanned from my original Nest Rising workbook. "My story isn't unique," I said. "That's why it matters. Because there are thousands of people out there, just like I was, wondering if their name will ever mean anything good again. Wondering if the damage can be undone." I paused, let the room settle. You don't fix people by saving them. You fix systems by giving people space to save themselves. The applause started slow, then swelled, and I knew I'd said exactly what needed to be heard. That night, I got a text from Lenora. "Tux, I watched online. You made me cry, Mar. I think I finally get it." I texted back, "You're getting there." "So am I." In June, we broke ground on the 4th nest, our first one out of state, San Diego. A whole new market, a whole new coast, but the same heart. I flew out for the first week, walking the empty space with blueprints in hand, imagining paint colors and workstations. A young woman from the city council walked with me. "We need this," she said. "We have programs, but we don't have a place that feels like this." "It's not just about what we do," I told her. "It's about who we believe people still can be." She nodded. "That's the part no one builds for." Liam and I spent our first anniversary in the backyard of the original nest, just the 2 of us. A blanket, a picnic, fairy lights strung between 2 poles. We toasted with root beer and watched the moon rise. "I still don't know how you did it," he said, staring at me like I was something sacred. I leaned into him, brick by brick, boundary by boundary, day by day. He nodded, and name by name. The mail brought a thick envelope that August. Return address: a local university. Inside, A certificate. An honorary degree in community development and financial advocacy. There was a note from the dean, "Your work teaches more than any textbook ever could." I framed it, not because I needed the validation, but because I wanted the girls who walked into my offices, scared, tired, uncertain, to see that you didn't have to do things the traditional way to earn your place at the table. Lenora came by again in the fall, this time with a proposal. "I want to open a mini nest," she said, eyes bright. "Not the whole thing, just a version for teen girls in the foster system. A place to help them build credit before they turn 18, teach them budgeting, safety nets, self-worth." I stared at her. "You think I can do it?" she asked. I stood up and hugged her. "I think you already are." We partnered, launched a pilot, called it STEM Nestlings. And for the first time, Lenora didn't need me to lead, she took charge. Built something honest, built something hers. I watched from the sidelines, tears pricking behind my eyes. We'd both come so far. By winter, the nest had grown beyond what I could hold in 2 hands. But it hadn't outgrown me. Because I hadn't outgrown myself. I still wore the scars, still had days where my heart thudded when I saw an unknown charge on my statement, or when a strange envelope arrived in the mail. But I also had something more powerful now. A legacy. Built from betrayal, stacked with care, and sealed with the names of every woman who ever thought her story ended with someone else's decision. It didn't. And it never would again. The December sun hung low in the sky, casting long shadows across the sidewalk as I unlocked the front door of the original nest. It was quiet. Just me and the soft creak of the old hinges, the scent of yesterday's coffee lingering in the air. The others wouldn't arrive for another hour. I walked through the co-working lounge slowly, fingertips brushing the backs of chairs, the worn grooves in the tables. Each dent had a story. Each scuff was a marker of someone's beginning. This place, my first rebuild, had grown into something no spreadsheet could contain. 4 nests, with 3 more in progress. The San Diego branch was booming. A site in Minneapolis was halfway renovated. Detroit had just approved permits. And back here in Portland, the nest was more than a community space. It was an anchor. My phone buzzed, a text from Lenora. "Topgritsado's first Nestlings graduation today. We filled every seat. You are right. Believing in someone changes everything." I smiled, tucking the phone into my coat pocket. It wasn't about being right. It never had been. It was about never being powerless again. Later that day, the original nest was packed wall to wall for our Winter Rising Gala, an event we'd invented out of thin air last year. Half celebration, half fundraiser, and all heart. Becca had decorated with soft golden lights strung across the windows, and Nina had organized a small stage where tenants told stories about their breakthroughs. I stood at the edge of the room, Liam's arm around my waist, watching a woman named Janelle speak about escaping an abusive marriage and rebuilding her credit from scratch. "I thought I'd be drowning forever," she said, voice shaking but steady, "but I found this place, and I remembered how to breathe." Thunderous applause. Behind me, Kara dabbed her eyes with a napkin. "Every time," she whispered, "it gets me every time." We raised double our goal. But more than the money, it was the faces, the hope, the possibility. After the gala ended and people trickled out into the frosty night, I wandered back upstairs. My office was still, the framed certificate on the wall catching a glint of streetlight. A knock on the open door. "Lenora." "Got a minute?" she asked. "Always." She came in and sat across from me, pulling off her gloves. "The Nestlings kids wrote you letters," she said, holding out a thick envelope, "said they wanted you to know what you started." I opened it slowly. Inside were scraps of paper, folded cards, notebook pages filled with drawings and scrawled messages. "Thank you for giving us a space to dream. You made me believe I'm not broken. Nach Hom. I'm gonna be a lawyer someday. You're the reason I don't feel invisible." I covered my mouth, heart cracking open in the best way. Lenora reached across the desk, squeezed my hand. "You saved me too, Mar. I know I didn't deserve it, but you did. I shook my head. No, you saved yourself. I just finally let go of the rope. She laughed, tears slipping down her cheeks. The holidays passed in a blur of snow and cinnamon and community. I cooked dinner for my parents, just the four of us. We laughed more than we flinched. We made peace, not promises. Liam and I took a trip to the coast after New Year's. Just a weekend. Just us. We walked barefoot in the freezing sand, collecting shells, whispering dreams. He talked about starting a design scholarship. I told him I wanted to write a book. A book? He asked, brow lifted. Not about me, I said. About this. About us. About how building something real starts when you think you've lost everything. He smiled. Then I'll build the cover. Back in Portland, I started drafting. The manuscript flowed slowly at first, but each word felt like a stone laid carefully into a new foundation. I told the truth. About the mortgage. The betrayal. The heartbreak. The revenge that turned into redemption. And the transformation that came, not when I punished the people who hurt me, but when I decided to stop letting their choices define me. I finished it in spring. We self-published, called it Times Name by Name, and within weeks it started spreading. Bookstores ordered copies. Podcasts called. People emailed me stories that echoed mine so closely it gave me chills. A woman in Michigan, a teacher in Toronto, a single dad in Atlanta. They all had something taken from them, and they were building it back. One name at a time. One night in late May, I returned to the original nest, just as the sun dipped below the city skyline. I stood at the glass doors for a long moment, staring at the reflection of who I'd become. Older, sure. Wiser. But still me. Inside, Becca was locking up. She waved. Want me to set the alarm? I've got it, I said. She handed me the keys. Feels like old times. I watched her walk down the sidewalk, her figure fading into the golden light. I turned the key, locked the door, and then I stood alone, listening to the hum of the heater, the quiet flicker of exit signs. I ran a hand along the front desk. Then I whispered aloud to no one and everyone. I'm not who I was, and I don't have to be, because I built this, not for revenge, not for pride, but so no one else would ever wonder if they were allowed to begin again. The lights clicked off. I stepped out into the night and closed the door behind me. 2 more great stories are next. Don't miss them! Subscribe and turn on notifications.